my name's Osian Meilir, fy enw i Osian Meilir, a fi'n ddawnswr yn artist dawns yn gweithio'n llawrydd, a fi'n perfformio a creu ac yn choreography. So I'm Osian Meilir. I get called Meilir or May, and I'm a dance artist working as a performer and a choreographer mainly. And I'm originally from West Wales, Ceredigion, on the west coast of Wales, near Llangranog, New Quay. And I left to train as a dancer in London when I was 18, and I stayed there for 6 years. And then I came back only a year ago to live in Cardiff to sort of continue with my dance practice and career. And in Wales, I had a lot of work in Wales when I lived in London, and I'm very passionate about the Welsh language as well. So coming back to Cardiff is really sort of, a lovely opportunity for me to sort of incorporate that into my practice and into what I do. So yes.
We share quite similar journeys because I'm also from West Wales, from Pembrokeshire, born and bred. And I left home at the age of 16 in pursuit of a career in the arts. And sadly at that time, I didn't feel like it was a possibility for me in Pembrokeshire. I didn't feel like there were enough opportunities, and so I left. And I've been working, living and working in London for the last 9 years. 6 for you. And then in 2020, I returned home to Wales and moved to Cardiff for the first time, and have since become artistic director of a theatre company called Fideo. And our focus as a company is that we want to make a seismic shift in the Welsh cultural sector to ensure that people from the global majority are embedded and thriving in all aspects of theatre and arts in Wales. So here on a mission to make a change, and really excited to share with you kind of our first encounters with outdoor arts, because I'd say that we're both really early on in our careers. We're so excited to be here to learn from all of you, and hopefully by sharing our first pieces of work that we've made, hopefully you'll get some inspiration and we can have a conversation afterwards. So what was your first encounter with outdoor arts?
Doing that exercise at the beginning, I was trying to remember, and there was one piece of work that I remember. It was a National Youth Theatre Wales performance, and it was held at Llanecheuron, Manor House, Plasty Llanecheuron in Aberaeron, and I just remember it being the most sort of giving me the most bubbly, exciting feeling of this just theatre and stories being told out in the open air. And I think being in that place as well, I think place is really important when you are talking about outdoor art, and how sort of that sort of layers context and history as well in different ways, and it can mean different things. So that piece of work, it was sort of promenade, and it took us around a lake and into the manor and into the forest, and I guess that sort of really opened my eyes a little bit into there's a world beyond the theatre, and because I still quite consider myself quite new to outdoor art. So yeah, that was my very, very first experience.
So it's clear that outdoor arts has been thriving in Wales for many a decade, and I reflect back onto my first encounter, and it was in one of Pembrokeshire's amazing castles, so Carew Castle. I think I was about 12 maybe, and my mum took me to see, I think it was a version of Shakespeare's The Tempest in the castle, and we got to go through all the different rooms, and there were different scenes inside each different section of the castle, and then we were outdoors in the big open courtyard, and it was raining. I was with the elements, there was Shakespearean text. It just blew my mind. I felt like I was part of the performance, as I was on a journey with the actors. So I think that really stayed with me, and the more that I was kind of assisting and doing associate work in London venues like the National Theatre, South Bank Centre, Royal Court, it was awesome, but what I missed was that relationship with us as viewers, participants, audience members. I found it pretty dull to just go and sit in the auditorium in the dark, watch something that's over there, feel really removed from it, being told it's a communal experience, and then leaving and not having spoken to anyone. So I think I'm always drawn towards opportunities and spaces and dynamics where we can shift that relationship. And I was lucky enough when I was 17, this is me as a punk fairy. As a member of National Youth Theatre Great Britain, I was taken to China to the World Expo in Shanghai. And this is the pavilion, the British pavilion that was designed by Thomas Heatherwick. And it's made up of thousands of fibre optic tubes, and in the end of each one is a different seed. And you can see this kind of pavilion grey area around the outside of it. So we performed A Midsummer Night's Dream, taking audience members on a journey throughout that space. And I had an amp strapped to my side, I had a ukulele, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And it was doing that thing that I experienced at 12 years old in Carew Castle, which was we were going on a journey, an epic adventure with amazing text, incorporating live music, dance, choreography, and we were playing with audience members. We were making them laugh. We were tickling them. Puck was tickling them, right? If they were happy for us to do that, of course. Like, some people just were like talking to us in Mandarin. We'd learnt some as well. And so that experience, again, is a kind of key milestone, I think, in my career development that made me go, that's the kind of work that I want to make. So, on to Querin.
On to Querin. Yes, I might just talk a little bit about I sort of said that I was new to outdoor art, but being asked to be here today to talk has made me really think about the other works that I've created and the other works that I've been a part of. So I've done a lot of work for children and theatre for young audiences. So this is a solo I made called Palmant Pridd, which is translated as pavement pasture. And then that's another work, Milk and Two Sugars. And as you can see by the backdrop and the things that I use, I really do bring the outdoors in. And I've always been interested in site-specific performances. Always sort of leaned towards not being in a theatre setting. And it's only sort of maybe now that I'm sort of realising that, oh, well, why bring it in? Why can't I just take it out? And I guess that does lead me to talk about Querin, which is the work I created last summer. It was a commission I received from Articulture to create a new piece of work. It's a dance theatre work, and I toured that around venues last summer, outdoor art venues, all for the Wales Outdoor Arts Consortium, that Querin is the very, very sort of first exposure of making my own work for the outdoors, and it was a really sort of rewarding experience, really, and I'm hoping to continue that this year. Before I go on to say a little bit more about Querin, do you want to jump in with the next slide?
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is the first piece that I directed, and it's called The Rose and the Bulbul. And that title, The Rose and the Bulbul, was inspired by a lot of Persian poetry, where the symbol of the rose and the bulbul, which is essentially a kind of South Asian version of the nightingale, they're really frequently used. And so we wanted to turn the rose and the bulbul into emblems, into characters, and physicalise a journey and a story. So this is Stockwood Park in Luton, where the company that hired me, Kadam, had been working for many years teaching classical South Asian dance such as Odissi and Kathak. And so it was time to create a performance together. So we worked with a professional cast of directors, dancers, musicians and storytellers, and then had a community chorus as well. So we created a piece together that addressed a kind of provocation to do with social change. I feel like that's often where ideas spring for me. It's like I'm thinking, how can I make a positive difference in the world? My skill sets are to do with creativity, so how can I use that creativity to make some change? And at this time, I was really considering questions of the stereotypes of people who have made journeys to this country and our relationship with outsiders or difference. So looking at stories of migration, and particularly stories of people who have been refugees and then moved to the country. So then I worked with the writer Kamal Khan, and we told a story of Bulbul, who'd flown from a war-torn country, arrived in the UK, and meets Rose, who's a British South Asian girl who's seeking love. It came from the heart. And through this journey, through the different gardens in Stockwood Park, they made friends. And as simple as that sounds, it was the way that we used music and dance to express culture, and how we kind of found that shared understanding, and then formed new community. And it was a really, really special production, and did everything that I wanted to do in terms of connection to place, connection to people, and then the core themes that are so important to my work, which is telling our stories. So back to Gwerin, and you do something really similar, I think, in terms of drawing on tradition. So if you're looking at like South Asian traditional dance forms, it's going back to our past, in a way contemporizing it, bringing it up to the present, to say something new, an expression of identity. It feels like that's something similar in your work.
Absolutely, yeah. That's pretty much what Gwerin does. And so within my practice, that's a picture of Gwerin.
That was such a good reaction.
Yeah, it was a great reaction. Yeah, it was. So Gwerin is sort of rooted in Welsh culture, specifically Welsh folk culture, and more specifically traditional Welsh folk dancing. I've been folk dancing all my life, and my whole family folk dances as well. So I've sort of grown up around it, and it's really sort of seeped in almost unknowingly into my movement practice. And that's when I sort of got the idea to make Gwerin. And one of the things I'm passionate about as well is sort of celebrating culture, celebrating identity, but also the intersections between different facets of my own identity, and how I can explore those crossovers. So that really sort of comes across in Gwerin. So it comments on notions of Welshness and queerness, and also it's a celebration of identity and a chance to bring people together. There's a really sort of a strong element of community to it as well, I think. Especially at the end of last year, when we'd all been through however many lockdowns, and it was a very sort of a hard time for everyone, where bars and pubs and stuff had been closed. I think Gwerin was sort of like a bit of a response to that as well, sort of making a space to bring people together to just share joy and music and dance, and celebrating ourselves as well.
Was there text involved in the piece as well?
Yes, yeah, there was text. So at the end of Gwerin, so it's inspired by the patterns and the steps of traditional Welsh folk dancing that you see sort of develop throughout the work, as well as the performers' relationships as well. They sort of develop, they start off quite ostracised and quite separate and and then they sort of warm up towards each other, and they really find a community together in those developing patterns. And then right at the end, there's a beautiful poem from a track by a Welsh folk artist called Gwilym Bowen Rhys, called Arenig, and I can read a little bit of it out. So the poem actually speaks about a mountain who does its duty as a mountain. It accepts the snow every winter, and it embraces the lamb every spring, and every year it has a routine, and this is what the mountain does. But in this poem, at the end of the poem, the mountain sort of rejects all of its responsibilities, and it's like, I'm going to be my own mountain, and it breaks out in these beautiful sort of fiery colours, and sort of rejects a metaphor for sort of rejecting that sort of society sort of constraints and all of that thing. I'll read a little bit of it out because it'll be nice to hear a bit of Welsh as well. So the end of the poem goes, Ond un hwyr o haf fe wrthododd fod yn fynydd. Aeth yn fflamiau a dangos ei liwiau a'r cwbl ohonyn yn torri allan yn grigiau o gyneddfau porffor a gwyrdd, yn griglwythig ar lluoedd glas a phinc, yn garneddau o rymusterau coch a du. O'i weld felly, ni allwn, ond syni gan faint o ryfeddodau a welwn yn y tân. Mae'n ryfeddodau mewn bywyd. So that's the end of Gwerin. We've got a little sneak peek into the piece there.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like I should share some of the text from The Rose and the Bulbul. And I have a question which I'd love to get your experience with, which is just about our relationship with text outside. what can we do? I've tried a few different models, miking performers, not miking performers, using pre-recorded text, which was yours pre-recorded?
Pre-recorded, yeah.
And then the wet weather when you've got technical equipment. So please, if you have experience in this, please come and share with me afterwards, because I really need to figure out how, because text is so important to me in the work as well, that it's to add to the visual.
Yeah.
So this is Bulbul when he first meets the audience. And everyone's gathered in a circle and he flits between different people. Miles have we flown over the land that was torn in two. We have seen the wasteland of our human remains, broken bones of lovers and broken stones of our homes. We kissed goodbye to the friend, the father, and said farewell to our mothers as we dipped our feathers in lead to repair our broken wings. When morning broke and shone its first arrow of light, to unknown horizons we took flight. 1,000 nights we flew, and the sky we knew became a battleground of betraying winds that bit into our wings. The promise of a garden kept our spirits alive, as we followed the scent of a rose as our guide. We are thirsty for the water. Can you help us? So, next to...
Yes, I guess whilst the images for Querin are still up there, I might just pose some questions off the back of what Querin is about and what it stands for. I'm just going to throw them out there, and then we'll just
pick them up later.
We'll pick them up later or throughout the day or tomorrow or whenever. So yeah, off the back of what Querin sort of stands for, I guess the question I'll ask is, how can we use the wealth of history and culture that we already have here in Wales and tell those stories within a contemporary dialogue? And how do we transform the traditional to create new narratives that speak for and represent the underrepresented today? So those are the sort of...
Keep those hanging in the air. And I might talk about the latest piece that I've directed, which you may have heard of, The Walk with Little Amal, who made her journey from the Turkey-Syria border all the way to Manchester. And I was lucky enough to direct her welcome to Coventry. And we created a show with Emergency Exit Arts, were the producers, and Coventry City of Culture Trust were the co-producers as well. And so we worked with, it was site-specific, of course, outdoor. We worked with the backdrop of Coventry Cathedral, which itself had been bombed in the Blitz, if you know the history of this building. And they actually left the kind of ruins as a testament of the impact of war, and then built a new cathedral next to it. And when I was speaking with lots of people as we were generating the ideas for the show, there was one woman who said that when she arrived in the UK and stood in the middle actually of the cathedral, she said it felt like there was a tunnel of time travel where she was taken back to her home country when she was a child and her parents had said, right, it's time to go and hide downstairs now because the lights are back in the sky and let's play a game of hide and seek. And of course, that reality we know is happening today, and it makes us all the more, like the power of us and our collectivity today in this space is we are all here to use our art and our creativity to heal, to reflect, to consider the huge questions of our time. What is it to be human? What is it to go through war? What is it to travel and migrate? And so we created the show around all of those key notions. And Amal met Chandani, a character who was played by the Coventry's children's poet laureate, who wrote poetry that was interwoven through the whole piece. And you're missing the peace there, but peace is the dream of a shared human soul that we build every day with forgiveness and kindness and hope. And so in my work, I've been lucky enough to kind of increase in scale, and this was October last year. And I'm just so excited now to go forward in bringing all of these elements of work together and informing a process that is fueled by well-being and togetherness and community. And hopefully that then transfers into the experience that we have in the performance. And the questions that I would like to leave us with. Are we truly appreciative of the importance of representing all Welsh cultures on our stages and in our outdoor spaces? Have we done enough to set up meaningful structures in our organisations and productions to ensure that global majority people, but insert all people, so that we feel safe, welcomed and embedded in every aspect of the work? And it's a conversation that I'd be really keen to have with you all about how we can make this work and move forwards together. Thank you so much for your time and for listening to Meilir and myself.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Diolch yn fawr.